successor to Elijah the prophet, and we're going to kind of start talking about him when actually Elijah is in a cave in a Mount Horeb. He had been running from Jezebel, who was trying to kill him at the time, so he left there. This is in 1 Kings chapter 19, 19 to 21. It says, so he departed from there, and he found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him. And he was with the 12th. And Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said,
I don't think I'm in the same place.
You've got Second Kings up there. You said First Kings. Which one are you actually in?
I'm in 1 Kings right now.
First
Second,
It's got Second Kings up there.
yeah, that's going to come later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kings what?
1 King 19, 19 to 21.
In chapter 2?
No, chapter 19. 1 King chapter 19. I've got several verses I'm going to be reading. I've got several verses I'm going to be reading that he don't have in there. So, I've got them mostly on here. I can probably do most of the reading. No, it's just me starting off a different spot he was expecting. We're in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 19 to 21. All right, I'm going to start over here. And so Elijah departed and went from there, and he found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him. And he was with the 12th. Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, Let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you. And he said to him, Go back, for what have I done to you? And he returned from following him, and took the yoke of the oxen, and sacrificed them, and boiled the flesh with the yokes of the oxen, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and went after Elijah and assisted him. And when Elijah cast his cloak on Elisha, it kind of symbolizes the transfer of the prophet of God's prophet from Elijah to Elisha. That's kind of what that symbolizes. And by slaughtering his oxen and burning his yokes and everything, I mean, Elisha was basically saying it was a done deal, and he was going to follow Elijah and wasn't coming back because he burned everything. So. And Elisha served Elijah as an attendant and learned from him for his future role as God's prophet. And that'd be tough to do, just to throw everything you own, burn it up, and follow somebody. I mean, I don't know how many of us could do that, but you'd have to have some immense faith to do something like that. And all right, I got 2 Kings 2, 6 through 14 that I'm going to read here. And then it says, Then Elijah said to him, Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan. But he said, As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave. So the two of them went on. 50 men of the sons of the prophets also went and stood at some distance from them. As they both were standing by the Jordan, then Elijah took his cloak and rolled it up and struck the water, and the water was parted on the one side to the other, till the two of them could go over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you. And Elisha said, Please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me. And he said, You have asked a hard thing, yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if you do not see me, it shall not be so. And they still went on and talked, and behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. And he took up the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him, and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. And then he took the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him, and struck the water, saying, where is the Lord, the God of Elijah? And when he had struck the water was parted from one side to the other. And then Elisha went over. That's quite a way to go out, isn't it? In a whirlwind with, Elijah didn't even have to die. Does anybody know who else in the Bible didn't die? There you go. Genesis 5, I think, verse 24 is where that's located. Good answer. And it's talking about the chariots of fire and horses of fire. The horse-drawn chariot was the fastest means of transport and the mightiest means of warfare in that day. And the chariot and the horses symbolized God's powerful protection, which was the true safety of Israel. And the cloak of Elijah was picked up by Elisha, and it authenticated him as Elijah's legitimate successor. And when Elisha returned to the Jordan, he touched it with Elijah's cloak and parted the waters. And there's 4 times in the Bible, to my knowledge, where the water has been parted, and 2 of them are right here, what Elijah did and Elisha did. Where are the other ones at? The Red Sea. There's one more. No. There you got it. Joshua, he's right. That's when he was leading them out of the wilderness into Israel, the promised land. I think he had the guys carrying the Ark of the Covenant walk out in front of them, and when their feet touched the water parted. And the best I remember from reading. That's kind of interesting. I didn't realize there was that many times for a while. And let's see. It says Ahab and Jezebel had influenced the whole northern kingdom of Israel to worship idols, and the king of the people didn't listen or respect God's prophets. Even though Elijah had continually performed miracles to prove true worship, now Elisha had the authority, a double portion according to Scripture, and he was called to stand up for truth in that sinful society. And after Elisha healed the water in Jericho, after he'd come back across the river, he headed towards Bethel. And in 2 Kings 2, does he not have the right stuff up there? Maybe that's not the right one. All right, never mind. I thought I gave him this verse too, but I don't think I did. 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 23 to 25. And it says, and he went up from there to Bethel, and while he was there, going up on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go up, you bald head. Go up, you bald head." And he turned around, and when he saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys. From there he went out to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. Does that seem a little harsh, or what do you guys think about that? Well, yeah, that's about it. And it does seem kind of harsh at first glance, but why Elisha would curse the young kids and why God would have bears maul them. But it seems like there might be a slight error in translation there too, because the New International Version Bible says some boys, New Living Translation says a group of boys.
I got the King James, it says
Little children. ESV says small boys.
Like that. In the commentary on mine, it says it was young men who were questioning Elisha's authority
Yeah.
as Elijah's successor.
That's what I was gonna get to. You're getting on.
Just like he was saying, you know, it's a challenge of authority. And just like in Leviticus, when it was a journey as a traveler within a camp, even what verse, when he was gathering sticks of firewood, he was stoned. It was an example to be set, and that's probably the same difference.
Right.
Authority is supreme, and this is the punishment.
Right. Oh, well, they got punished, didn't they? I mean, if you, when you read this, it makes it sound like a bunch of kids wandered out of a grade school and started harassing him or something, but youths. The Hebrew word used here in this description is ne'ar, and that word is also used to describe servants and soldiers, and it was also used to describe Isaac when he was 28 years old. So these are probably young men, and yeah, and they were, and nearby Bethel was a hot spot for idolatry at that time. They may have been students of some of the false prophets there that come out to harass him, to keep him out of town, and I can guarantee you Satan would have wanted to keep him out of town. And it says, in context, the mockery directed at Elisha was not merely about his physical appearance, but represented a broader disrespect towards God's appointed messenger. In the context of ancient Israel, prophets were revered as God's spokesperson. Not everyone had the Spirit of God in the Old Testament, so God anointed specific individuals to speak his message. And don't we have it made as believers to have the Spirit living in us? I mean, we got a leg up on a lot of those people back then. And the role of the prophet goes way back to Noah and Moses, which is a serious spiritual lineage. Insulting a prophet was equivalent to insulting God. In this light, young men's jeers can be seen as a severe act of blasphemy. And I guess they had it coming.
Another interesting note is that it was two she-bears, not two Chicago bears.
No,
He would've
the
been
bear.
calling us.
Coming from a Packers guy. All right. Bethel, which means the house of God, was named by Jacob after he had a vision there. While Jacob slept, God gave him a dream confirming the Abrahamic covenant and showed him a staircase to heaven where angelic beings were traveling. Yet the Israelites had made it a place of false worship. This idol-loving backdrop highlights the spiritual rebellion that was common in the region, and the boys/men behavior reflected the community's disregard for God's covenant. And the punishment served as a stark reminder of the consequences of such disrespect. And the bears mauled 42 of these boys, and that means there were more boys probably there than just got 42 of them. The attack might have been physically threatening Elisha. We don't know for sure. Sounds like it was probably some kind of a mob scene. And the bears protected him from violence. And also, part of God's judgment against the land or nation would be the rise of wild beasts, a symbol of chaos ruling over them instead of order, often in response to idolatry. In Deuteronomy 32, verse 24, it says, "They shall be wasted with hunger and devoured by plague and poisonous pestilence, and I will send the teeth of beasts against them, and with the venom of things that crawl in the dust." I'd say the teeth of beasts qualifies as 2 she-bears. And the harsh response shows how serious God views the protection of his prophets and respect for divine authority. This incident reinforced the necessity of honoring God's chosen representatives. The attack of these young men was twofold. It said go up, and they believed that might have been either they were threatening to send him where Elijah went, or they were making light of the fact that Elijah had gone to heaven in that manner, and they also made fun of his bald head. You bald head, it says. Elisha may have been bald, or he may have had a hairstyle short on top, or he may have shaved his head for mourning, for all we know, because he did just lose his teacher. And Krummacher writes, baldness was viewed by the lower orders as a kind of disgrace, for it was one of the usual consequences of having leprosy, so it was accounted a sign of personal or mental degradation. And I don't have leprosy, everybody. And God willing, I never will. But, Lenny might think I got some kind of mental degradation, though.
Again, it shows that these young men didn't understand the tradition that in mourning, a man would shave his head.
Right.
A woman would shave her head in mourning to show their mourning.
Well, they did that back in those days. Where was I?
My guess would be that Elisha had shaved his head in
That's-
mourning. They were also mocking,
Right.
forgetting and mocking the tradition.
Yeah, I think I'm getting ready to get into that a little bit. One primary lesson is the importance of respecting those who serve as God's messengers. Elisha, as a prophet, represented God's voice and authority. The boys' mockery wasn't just about Elisha or any of his physical appearance. It was a deeper disrespect towards God. As Christians, we are reminded to honor and respect our spiritual leaders and the roles they played. And Hebrews 13:17 advises, add confidence in your leaders and submit to their authority, because they keep watch over you as those who must give an account. Do this so that their work will be a joy, not a burden, for that would be of no benefit to you. I mean, that kind of respect fosters unity and harmony in the church. And the pastor's always talking about, he'll be held at a higher standard than the rest of us, and I mean, it's kind of talking that way, where as one who must give an account, and one who has to give an account is going to take care of his flock.
All of us are actually held to an account for what we say, because they show.
For what we say, yeah.
disrespect with their words and their conduct.
Right, exactly.
We show respect at all times.
We sure do. I don't want bears coming to me.
Well, they're Chicago Or Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, oh, I'm a Cardinal fan too, so.
Go Brewers.
This incident teaches us to approach our faith with a sense of reverence and awe. This means guarding our speech and actions, and to ensure they honor God and reflect our devotion to Him. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29 says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Our words should edify and reflect our respect for God and His teachings, like you were saying. And our mouth is the most dangerous weapon any of us have. It can do more damage than weapons of war. Let's see, before we look any more at what Elisha did, let's look at what he didn't do. He did not turn and run. He did not argue with them. He did not run at them. He did not react out of self-defense from a standpoint of ego or pride. He simply ignored their words. God's response proves this. What Elisha did, he took up his armor and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. The curse in the Hebrew word galal, meaning to be slight or of little account, and seems to express a removal from a place of blessing. Elisha simply turned them over to the Lord and to their own devices, which removed them from the protection of God. This would show the city and the surrounding area the truth that without the Lord there is no protection. And blasphemy to God's servant and his word is serious business. Note that Elisha didn't call the bears out. God did. 2 female bears, the worst kind.
Yeah.
And it wasn't mama and papa and baby bear, that's for sure.
There were baby bears around. Mama bears were especially.
Maybe they got in between the two of them. And they came out and tore 42 young men up. You would think this would strike the fear of God into everybody, but man just seems to forget stuff like this or ignore it, and it just gets forgotten. And it seemed like the Israelites had a habit of forgetting some pretty amazing things that happened. As Christians, we're called to build communities that uphold and reinforce godly values. We need to teach and model respect, love, and reverence for God. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7 says, "These commandments I give to you today and are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up." We need to teach our family and these values so they can keep honoring God and they don't end up mauled by bears. Yeah. Today, every born-again Christian has the Holy Spirit, and all are encouraged to speak as a representative of God. We face challenges and threats as well, but God promises to protect us. Like in Romans 8:31, it says, "God is for us; who can be against us?" We're safe in His arms, and we can trust His omnipotent protection. And God empowers us to withstand and overcome through faith. God's protection surrounds and sustains us as His children. And another verse here sounds like it was talking about discipline. It was Leviticus chapter 26, verses 21 and 22. It says, "Then if you walk contrary to me and will not listen to me, I will continue striking you sevenfold for your sins. And I will loose the wild beasts against you, which shall bereave you of your children, and destroy your livestock, and make you few in number, so that your roads shall be deserted." That sounds like another thing where he's telling them, what's going to happen, and the bears shouldn't surprise anybody. And I kind of wanted to talk about the number 42 a little bit here. It might sound like a random number, but I don't think there's anything random in the Bible. I think everything's there for a purpose. But some of the other things I found in the Bible that had the number 42 is a number of cities that were given to the Levites that were not cities of refuge was 42. And, of course, the number of young men mauled. And the number of descendants of the wicked Ahab that Jehu kills in 2 Kings 10:14. That was 42. And it's the number of months the nations will trample the holy city in Revelations 11:2. It's 42 months. And in Revelations 13:5, the number of months that the beast is authorized to utter blasphemous words. There's a lot of stuff doing with 42 here. And the number of patriarchs, kings, and rulers of Israel in the genealogy of Jesus. I think that's 42 generations from Abraham to Jesus. And the number of days that the two witnesses will prophesy in sackcloth and ashes in Revelations 11:3 is 1,260 days, which is equal to 42 months. And the number of days that the women who was clothed in the sun and with the moon in her feet, who bore the child, and to rule the nations, had prepared for her by God 1,260 days, which is also 42 months. Seems like there's a lot of stuff at the end times having to do with 42 in there. I don't know how all that stuff connects together, if the 42 and the bears has something to do with the, prophecy for the end times, or I'm not that knowledgeable on that yet. I'll have to dive into that a little more. And I guess we can talk about some of Elisha's miracles that he performed too. Of course, he parted the Jordan there. He healed the waters in Jericho in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 21. 2 Kings 2:24 is the bears. And filling the valley with water so the animals may drink was 2 Kings 3:17. And the deception of the Moabites of the valley of blood so that they would lose the battle is 2 Kings 3:22. Filling the vessels with oil provided the widow that needed money for creditors, 2 Kings 4:4. And the prophecy that the Shunammite woman would have a son, 2 Kings 4:16. In 2 Kings 4:32 through 37, that's a resurrection of the Shunammite woman's son, and that's kind of interesting too. It says, when Elisha came into the house, he saw the child lying dead on his bed. So he went in and shut the door behind the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he went up and lay on the child, putting his mouth on his mouth, and his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And as he stretched himself upon him, the flesh of the child became warm. Then he got up and walked once back and forth in the house, and went up and stretched himself upon him again. The child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Then he summoned Gehazi, and he said, call the Shunammite. So he called her. And when she came to him, he said, pick up your son. And she came and fell at his feet, bowing to the ground, then picked up her son and went out. And that's one of the earlier instances where somebody was raised from the dead. Elijah also raised a child from the dead from a lady that he was staying with during the drought. And there's a lot of things that took place near the hill of Morah. The town of Shunem rested at the base of the southern slope of the hill of Morah, and that's where Elisha raised this child from the dead. And centuries later, Jesus also passed through the same valley on the north side of the hill of Morah, at the gate of the village of Nain, and Jesus raised a widow's only son from the dead. That's in Luke 17:11 through 17. And the crowd around Jesus erupted, saying, a mighty prophet has risen among us, and God has visited his people today. By referring to Jesus as a mighty prophet, the people made the connection between Jesus and the prophet Elisha, who also raised an only son in the same area centuries earlier. Jesus used not only his power, but also a geographical connection to reveal himself as God's messenger of grace. And some other things that happened around the hill of Morah there were Gideon feared to face the Midianites who camped beside the hill of Morah, and that was in Judges 7:1. And also in a battle against the Philistine, King Saul took his own life nearby Mount Gilboa. There was a lot of stuff that happened right around that hill. And some of the other miracles, there was healing of the gourds, 2 Kings 44, verse 41, increasing the bread to many, and 2 Kings 4:43, and the healing of Naaman, and 2 Kings 5:14. That's an interesting story. And the perception of Gehazi's transgression, and Gehazi was his assistant, and that's found in 2 Kings 5:26, and cursing Gehazi with leprosy for sin, 2 Kings 5:27, and the floating of the iron axe head over water, 2 Kings 6:6, and the prophecy of the Syrian battle plans. And 2 Kings 6:9. And the vision of the chariots and the horses for Elisha's servant, 2 Kings 6:17. There's a bunch more. One of the more interesting ones is this very last one he did, the resurrection of a dead man that touched Elisha's bones. He was long dead, and his bones, and I can't remember what the story was now, but the guy, they stuck him in this little cave or something, and he fell up against his bones and came back to life. That's kind of interesting. I love that one. It's 2 Kings 13:21 where that one's found. And anybody wants any of this stuff or any of these verses, I send them to you. Has anybody got anything to?
He was the only person to have more miracles than Elisha.
Who has more?
Who is the only one in the Bible who had more miracles than Elisha?
They say you can't write a book on Jesus' miracles.
Yeah.
Jesus
Yeah, that's the only one I can think of.
Say that he
Yep.
performed so many miracles it was unknown.
Well, he had exactly double the recorded miracles of Elijah. So
Elisha or? Oh yeah, double four. I never really actually looked to see that there were double the miracles on that. Like, I don't have a whole lot more. I know it's a little bit early.
yeah, and another
Something about
interesting
it
one.
also, in that area at the time, I believe Martin was the common deity at the time. So a Christian or a Jesus, God wasn't exactly something, it was an outside thing in that area. So it wouldn't have been friendly most denominations to anybody that would practice a different religion. Like if he was around Rome, he was asking, distinguishing himself from the others.
Yeah.
So it was probably an attack against them, not just his person, but just
Oh.
religiously in general.
Oh, I think you're probably right.
We say, who was Elijah was
Yeah, Ahab and Jezebel. Yes, he something just. If that was when Mount Carmel was.
she promoted the other deities because Judaism at the time was a perfect thing. She was in there and then she promoted the worship of other gods. She was
Oh yeah.
the Sumerian all that down along the road was very much dominant Judaism in that aspect.
She was a Canaanite, and her name means unspotted before Baal. Pure before Baal.
Well, it's a shame that town. I mean, it was. I mean, it was Bethel. It was the house of God. I mean, Beth El, El meaning God.
It's like a great rise and a great fall.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when people stray.
It's some remind you of the world today a little bit, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The way of things.
Yeah.
And the Roman Empire and everything, they kind of essentially did the same thing. They adopted even more, there was adoption of deities, and then there was corruption, because the money involved.
Oh,
All these great empires, it seems like that's a trend. You get away from the basics and the moral values and stuff like that. You adopt them, they say that the world stuff.
stood behind their God.
By the conviction that God is the only God.
Amen. Well, does anything, I have any other questions or anything they want to discuss? Or?
One Marduk was one of the principal gods of the Babylonians.
Yeah. Like some of the Samaria and all that area. Very popular, like.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they had,
Philistines were very.
yeah. Yeah, their chief god was, fish.
Yeah. I can't think of his name either. The
Yeah,
Philistines.
he-
He's the one that fell over when the Ark of the Covenant came in.
Yeah, kept falling